Greetings, booktubers, and welcome back to Grammaticus Books. Welcome to what is going to be a great video for you here today on the channel, because today we're doing a video that I've wanted to do for a very long time. I'm going to show you guys my top 10 favorite book covers of all time out of my collection here that I own. And I've been wanting to do this for quite some time, like I said. Now, this video, this is open to any booktuber. In fact, I would encourage you, if you're a booktuber, go ahead and make your video on what your favorite book cover art is out of your collection and put it up on your channel. I would love to see what your collection is and which of the books that you like best of their cover art out of your collection. And if you're watching this video, please go down in the comments section and let me know what is your favorite piece of cover art out of the books that you own. What is the name of the book? What's the name of the artist? And just give me a couple of reasons why that piece of cover art is your favorite. I would love to hear from you guys down in the comments section, so feel free to do that. Now, when I did this, when I picked my top 10 book covers out of my collection, I did impose a couple of rules upon myself. And the first one is that I had to physically own it. It's kind of an obvious rule, but it had to be one that was actually in my collection here at Gramsend, South of Shire. That was rule number one. Rule number two was that you could only have one piece of cover art painting by artist, per artist. There could only be one painting per artist, meaning I can't duplicate artists, because if I could duplicate artists, all this would be 10 cover art examples of Frank Frazetta's Conan series that he drew, and that would get boring very fast. By imposing this rule on myself here, it means I have to pick 10 different artists for 10 different covers, and it's going to be artistically and stylistically much more interesting of a video than if I could duplicate artists. Now, Frank Frazetta, obviously, he's going to be in this list of top 10 book covers. I don't think that's a surprise at all. And I'm going to show them to you here in just a second. They're in no particular order, but I am going to save my Frank Frazetta book for last, just because I think that the Frank Frazetta that I picked is a bit of an unusual one. It may surprise you, and so I'm going to save that one for last. But without any further ado, let's get into it. My top 10 favorite book covers out of my collection. Book number one is a banger. It is Robert Gould from the Elric Saga. This is Nelson Doubleday. This is Elric Saga Part 1. Robert Gould is not a super well-known artist, but I think if you saw his Elric paintings, he was very famous. He did the whole series here for Nelson Doubleday in both their paperbacks and their hardback series, and I think this is his best. He's a British artist, and you can see that in the high embellishment that he does here in his work. A lot of these British artists, they go into a lot of detail in their artwork, and that really comes through in this fabulous Elric painting here by Robert Gould. And this is from 1984. It is a book club edition. Look at the detail in his hair, all the waviness in the hair. I love it. Elric of Melniboné has been perfectly envisioned as the albino warrior from the Dreaming City. He's holding a Stormbringer, the black blade, but unusually he's got it sheathed, and he's just resting his arms across the pommel. And you've got the hawk coming down to land on his shoulder. And just look at the detail in the hawk. And then the birch trees on the setting here on his left, with the ground ivy underneath him giving a base. And that wraps around in a wraparound cover over here to the sword of the Tree of Swords, with the shields hanging off of the branches. And it is just magnificent. It's a wonderful, wonderful, detailed and embellished cover here by Robert Gould, and I think it is Robert Gould's best work, and that's why it's starting off here with our top 10 book cover arts. And that is Robert Gould, Elric Saga, number one from 1984. And that gets us to book number two. Book number two is Boris Vallego, but it is not one of his sword and sorcery paintings. Rather, it is Berserker Man. This is from 1979. Berserker Man by Boris Vallego, doing science fiction. Now, I think that Boris is actually at his best when he's doing science fiction. He's more famously known for his fantasy and sword and sorcery paintings, but he always paints from models when he's doing those, and I think it constricts him a little bit. And when he moves over into science fiction, it frees him up because he's not chained to a model, and his imagination takes over, and I think he does actually his best work when he's painting science fiction. And just look at this alien planetscape here for Berserker Man, with these great vintage-styled spaceships skimming over the surface of this planet, and all the colors that are involved in it. If I could have a poster of this, that would be absolutely amazing. I think it is one of Boris Vallego's best paintings, and it's a science fiction painting, and I absolutely love it here. And that's why it's here in the top 10 list. and that is Boris Vallego, Berserker Man from 1979. So that gets us to book number 3. Book number 3 is one of the most favored books out of my entire collection. At some point here, I'm going to have to do an entire video on this book. It is such a fantastic tome of mine, and that is A Tolkien Bestiary by David Day. David Day, a famous artist, he's most famous for his renderings of Tolkien's works, envisioning and bringing Tolkien's works to life in his books. This collects a ton of his drawings here. He's another British artist, and he is just, again, fantastic detail and embellishment. This is all pen and ink work, and it's a wraparound example of one of the black and white paintings out of the interior of the book. And this book is just filled with artwork that is just like this. And what a stupendous vision of the dragons. What a unique vision of the dragons. Just a typical one that just comes right out of Tolkien and Tolkien's world there. It just fits right into it. And I could just stare at this all day. The level of detail in here to attract your eye and look at it is just wonderful. And like I said, at some point I'm going to have to do an entire video here on this book by David Day, The Tolkien Bestiary. And this is from 1979. Wonderful, wonderful book. I bought this at half-price bookstores for $10. I'm not sure when. I've had this for a very long time, and that was a great deal. So that was number 3, David Day, which gets us to number 4. Number 4 is Michael Whelan. You know Michael Whelan had to be in here. Michael Whelan, the absolutely prolific cover artist from the 70s and the 80s. And this is one of my favorite Michael Whelan paintings. It's from Larry Niven and the Integral Trees. This is from 1987. This is the Del Rey edition, and it captures the essence of that book, The Integral Trees, perfectly, just absolutely perfectly. You've got a central figure of one of these nomads living here in the smoke ring, and inside of these integral trees, he's perfectly balanced, just graceful, hanging there in the air in the low gravity. And you've got one of the integral trees wrapping around the cover here. And it's got every element of the story perfectly encapsulated and perfectly rendered here by Michael Whelan in crisp, vivid colors. And it is just a fantastic book cover. And that's why this one had to be in here. Michael Whelan, The Integral Trees from Larry Niven in 1987. All right, and that brings us to book number 5, halfway through. And it is Dungeons & Dragons Art and Arcana, with the cover, the iconic cover by Larry Elmore. This is a reworking by Larry Elmore here in 2018 on this book, which does the visual history of the evolution of Dungeons & Dragons from an artistic standpoint and from a corporate standpoint, the history of the game Dungeons & Dragons as told through the artwork of the game, chronologically ordered. You can get this book for $25 on Amazon. It's a no-brainer if you're a fan of D&D or D&D art. And this is a reworking of the famous painting by Larry Elmore off the 1983 Red Box rule set. And it just screams Dungeons & Dragons. It is Dungeons & Dragons. You've got the heroic warrior who's come to the lair of the Red Dragon, fighting him over his hoard in order to capture the hoard from him. And it just perfectly encapsulates Dungeons & Dragons. And Larry Elmore renders it in these vivid colors that just make it jump off the page at you here. And it is absolutely spectacular. I love it to death. Dungeons & Dragons Art and Arcana, Larry Elmore, 2018. All right, so moving on to book 6. Book 6 is a bit different from the rest of them. It's much more rough. It's a much more primitive piece of art than the other pieces of art that I've shown you guys so far here on my top 10 collection. And it is Walter Rain, The Mind Spider and Other Stories by Fritz Lieber. This is from 1961. It's one of the older books in here. And the reason I like this piece of much more rough artwork is because it absolutely nails the subject of horror. It is absolutely raw, it's primal, it's the image of a wolf in the night or a rabid dog coming to tear your throat out. It gets that ancient image that is instilled there in the core of every person, of that fear of wolves and rabid dogs coming to get you. And it is just so right on the money. It's just got an energy to it, a primalness to it, even though it's done in a more primitive manner. that I just love this cover to death, and that is Walter Rain, 1961, The Mind Spider and Other Stories. Had to put that one in there. All right, so book number 7 is a Don Maitz cover. Don Maitz, another prolific artist from the 70s and the 80s. And this is Don Maitz, The Sunset Warrior by Eric von Lessbader. And that is from 1980, this edition. It was originally published in 1977. Don Maitz is an absolute master of light and glowing light effects in particular. He's got a great central figure here, a great heroic figure of the Sunset Warrior, framed appropriately in the setting sun as he's holding lightning coming out of his hand. But then on the back of the cover, and this is why this is one of my favorite Don Maitz's covers, is because you have these skeletal warriors coming up out of this this metal hatch, and they are glowing, and the glowing effects coming off of these warriors who are at the back of the Sunset Warrior coming to menace him are just fantastic. They're so wonderfully rendered. I love that effect there. I love the colors for the whole scheme, and this wraparound cover here by Don Maitz. It's absolutely wonderfully done, and that's why it's here in my top 10 cover art list. And that is Don Maitz, The Sunset Warrior by Eric von Lessbader. So that is number 7, which gets us to number 8. Number 8 is Ken Kelly and the People of the Black Circle from 1977. This is a Berkeley Putnam edition. They did a number of these hardbacks here. Ken Kelly, he had to be in here somewhere. And this is, in my opinion, Ken Kelly's absolute best piece of art that he ever rendered during his career. It's Conan the Barbarian from the story The People of the Black Circle. It is a wraparound cover. You start up here with the steps leading down into the lair of the black wizards of the People of the Black Circle. You get this fantastic altar with this arcane piece of energy, this ball of energy on that altar with the set serpents on it. The steps come down and you have this detritus on the floor and dead bodies that lead you to Conan. And the figure of Conan is perfect. It is the perfect renditioning of a savage Conan. I love the musculature on it. He looks powerful. He looks savage. He looks like he just came out of the Hyborian wilds, but he doesn't look like he's been living in a gym for the last 10 years in his life. And he is just getting ready to lay the smackdown on the last of the Black Wizards. And it's wonderfully posed by Ken Kelly. His rendition of the muscles, how he makes it look so solid, so muscular, and so powerful. It is just his best cover ever. And I love this sort of red Ragnarok gloom that he has here above the painting here to anchor the top part of it and push your eye down into the action on the bottom of it. A wonderful, wonderful painting by Ken Kelly. People of the Black Circle from 1977. So that's number 8. Let's go to number 9. Number 9 is Lana of Gathol and John Carter of Mars. It's Richard Corbin. Richard Corbin's one of my favorite graphic artists. I think he's an underrated graphic artist. And this is a classic example of Richard Corbin here. If you look at how he's rendered the muscles on here, it's this prototypical Richard Corbin. But more so here are his renderings of the Green Men of Mars, who he's got John Carter, the Warlord of Mars, here fighting and combating. It's just wonderful. I love his take on the Green Men of Mars. And Richard Corbin, he's just is so good with his kind of surreal renditions of all the subject matter that he paints. And he brings that surrealness here with great effect to Edgar Rice Burroughs and John Carter, the Warlord of Mars. And that is Nelson Doubleday, Richard Corbin from 1977. Great book, great cover by Richard Corbin, which gets us down to the last book here in the top 10 book cover art examples that I have, my favorite ones. It is Frank Frazetta. Which Frank Frazetta did I pick? And it is another book out of that Nelson Doubleday editions of Edgar Rice Burroughs, those hard copies they put out. But this is Frank Frazetta, of course, Enthuvia, Maid of Mars, and the Chessmen of Mars. And I think this is one of Frank Frazetta's best covers that he ever did. In terms of its total composition, he just knocks it out of the park. You've got this perfectly stylized Frank Frazetta over here, Frank Frazetta picture with his typical rendering of the male body with John Carter of Mars. He's got the typical Frank Frazetta cutlass with the very elaborate cutlass handguard that he's got on it. You've got the typical Frank Frazetta female that is on here She's usually very buxom, although this one not quite so much, but a little bit broader in the hips than most people like to paint their women. I like Frank, the way he renders his women. She's got this regal look to her. It's got all the classic elements of a Frank Frazetta painting. And then in the background, you have this science fiction city setting them off, and then a bridge off of the science fiction setting that takes you to the back of the cover where you have a savage bantha coming out of the savage wilderness. And what he's done here in his composition is he's separated out the savage world from the world of civilization and heroism, and then connected them with the bridge coming across with the yin and the yang, splitting the book up, and it's all done wonderfully. Just the savagery there on that bantha coming forward, the look of hunger in its eyes as it's coming forward, and you've got John Carter protecting Thuvia, the Maid of Mars, and this wonderful backdrop that he's done here with the black sky setting everything off. I think it's absolutely one of Frank Frazetta's best composed paintings, and it's why I picked it here for my Frank Frazetta example of my top 10 cover art books out of my collection. I love it to death, and that is Thuvia, Maid of Mars and the Chessmen from 1972. If you have a favorite Frank Frazetta, or if you think that I've gone off the deep end with my choice, let me know about it down in the comment section. I almost took the classic Frank Frazetta Bloodstone from Cain the Mystic Swordsman, but that just absolutely iconic pose there of Cain in front of the Bloodstone, the eponymously named Bloodstone with his bloody sword. This one came close, but I think for total composition that you can't beat Thuvia, Maid of Mars and the Chessmen of Mars, with just that wonderful layout by Frank Frazetta and the black just setting everything off. It's wonderfully composed, wonderfully executed. And those are my top 10. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I enjoyed bringing it to you. And with that, I'm going to wrap this one up, and I'm going to say take care, be safe, and I'll catch you guys next time.